Hi, my name is Stein, and I identify as a woman of trans experience. I want to take a few minutes to talk about my transition, my childhood, and my experience growing up in an ultra-Orthodox Jewish Hasidic community and transitioning to living full-time as the woman I am. I was born in Williamsburg in Brooklyn, New York. I am the 6th child out of 13. I have 5 older sisters, 4 younger brothers, and 3 more younger sisters. I grew up without internet, TV, movies, shows, no magazines, newspapers. I only had the community-based newspapers. Growing up, I was never confused really about my gender identity. I always felt like I am a girl, I am a woman. I have to live that life. I was just really confused and in total ignorance about these concepts, and I didn't know they exist. I thought I'm the only person on earth who has this, what I thought was a crazy idea of feeling like a different gender. As a kid, growing up, I had a lot of different ideas of how I'm gonna transition, how I could change myself. I obviously wasn't aware of any of the medical ideas of transition, such as hormone therapy or surgery or anything like that. For example, I had this crazy thought of at some point of organ transplant, of I can do a full body transplant. The schools that I went to were all ultra-Orthodox Jewish Hasidic schools. I went obviously to a boys only school. There was very little general education. I would say English up to a 2nd grade level, math maybe a 4th grade level. We didn't study any social studies or science or history or geography or anything like that. Throughout my teenage years, I started struggling a lot more with what I figured out later was called gender dysphoria. I started dealing with depression really hard. I would have every few weeks, I would have what I call blank periods where I'd get into total depression. And I would know very consciously that it's coming from this idea of not feeling like myself. But I also convinced myself that this doesn't make any sense and that's impossible. As much as I tried to get over the idea of being a girl and to tell myself that you're crazy, this doesn't make any sense, it didn't work. But I started to look into different concepts or different ideas of what could it be that makes me feel uncomfortable with myself. So I started exploring theology and philosophy, and that was something that was unacceptable in the community where I came from. So slowly I got into more and more clashes with my superiors, my teachers, principals in the school, rabbis who were obviously not happy with the questions that I asked. I got engaged when I was 17, I got married when I was 18, at 19 I had a son. Marriages in my community are all arranged marriages. Arranged by a matchmaker. Your parents take care of it. You just say yes or no, and usually you just say yes when your parents want you to. And then you get married. My marriage worked pretty well as long as I was okay with the community and I followed the general community guidelines, and I was actually finishing my rabbinical degree at that point. And I started teaching in a yeshiva, first tutoring and then teaching in a yeshiva, a religious school in the place where I lived at that point. Around the age of 19, I got to a point where all the questions that I had about religion started hitting me really hard. I think it was also at that point when I started to develop an adult personality and I had to present as a husband and a father that the gender dysphoria hit me really hard. And as in my teenage years, I couldn't fathom the idea that I am a woman, so I had to turn to something else and try to figure out what else it could be. But as I have had exhausted any kind of resources about philosophy I could find in my community, I had to go look on something else. So I took the gamble, as I would call it at that point, and went to the internet. The internet was something that was really bad in my community, something that you don't do. I was told it was dangerous because you can find information on there that you shouldn't read. And so I did exactly that. I went there to find information until it got to a point where I felt that I can't stay in the community and practice a life that I don't believe in and that I just can't relate to. So I slowly started the process of leaving the community. I first tried just to get an education I was working really hard to get my high school diploma. And at that point, I also came out to my wife as being not religious. Slowly, I got more and more alienated from my community, from myself emotionally, and from other people who started realizing that I'm not fully part of the community and believe. Until I got to a point where I had to give a divorce and move on with my life. Once I was out of the community, all of the questions, concerns, dysphoria that I had about my gender identity became a lot heavier. And it also, at that time, I was exposed that it exists. There are people like me, and there's help. There's something that I could do to actually live as the woman I am. However, I was still terrified of the idea of even thinking of transition. I knew that it's such a big deal. I have only started my transition out of the ultra-Orthodox community into the genital world, and there was such a long way to go with transition, so I tried to avoid it. In the spring of 2015, I went for the first time to see a gender specialist, who after a few sessions told me very clearly that what I struggle with is gender dysphoria, and I personally and consciously and subconsciously identify as a woman. They also told me that I have to take care of it, and just ignoring it is not going to make it go away. But the way I responded to that was stopping to see them. I was like, I don't want to go to you anymore, because I was still so terrified of the idea. Over the summer of this year, I tried to ignore it. I tried to stay afloat and move on with my life, and I failed badly. By the end of July of this year, it got to a point where it became really, really hard for me to live my life. It got to a point where I wouldn't talk to people. I would sleep for days. And that's when I realized that if I want to continue live a normal life, my only option is to transition. I started to see again a gender specialist around the beginning of August. And after a month, on September 4th, 2015, I did what I would consider one of the happiest and best decisions I made in life, and I started hormone replacement therapy. Since starting hormones, I slowly came out to more and more friends, first just in private, then I came out to the people that I live with. I also started to explore with clothes and a bit of makeup and other things that helped me present and feel more comfortable with my own body. And the feeling has been so amazing, and I can honestly say it was a feeling that I never had in my life. I started really feeling that I am myself, that I could do that. There is a possibility. And I decided finally that it's time to come out in public. I'm ready to come out and let everyone know that I am a woman, and I want to start live my life as a woman and live a life that is true to myself and true to the world. I also wanted to raise awareness to other people who struggle with similar struggles in my community and in the world as a whole. In my community, the topic of trans experience doesn't exist. People totally ignore it. And there are so many people who suffer in silence. And now that I came out, I can give them an example. I can tell them I was there. I was struggling with this. There is a possibility. You can do it. If you want to come out, if you want to live your own life, it might be hard, but it's a lot easier than not coming out. Going forward, I would love to help as many people as possible, whatever it will be, through videos, through Facebook or Twitter posts, through conversations, through speaking engagements. So if you want to stay in touch, subscribe to my channel so you'll be able to see the updates that I will constantly make in video. You can also subscribe to my Facebook and Twitter account. I will put it in the description some links of resources that have been really helpful to me online and in person, mainly about New York City because this has been my experience. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or any concerns. I'm getting a lot of messages. It might take me a while to get back to you, but I will make sure to get back to everyone. Thank you, world, and we'll see you guys soon.